Hey, it's Coach Hirsch. Today we're starting our supply and demand unit. We start off talking about demand because it's easier for all of us to understand because we're demanders or consumers. To begin with, we have to define demand. Like, what is it? Demand is the different quantities of goods that consumers are willing and able to buy at different prices. So, for example, you are able to purchase diapers because you have the money, but if you aren't willing to buy them, then there's no demand. Conversely, if you are willing to buy diapers, but you don't have enough money or you're not able to, then there is also no demand. What is the law of demand? The law of demand basically says that there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. And this makes sense because if we think about it, as things become more expensive, we generally want to buy less of them. And as they become less expensive, we generally want to buy more of it. So let's say if there was a fast food restaurant and normally the hamburgers are $1. Well, if they raise the price to $3, we're going to demand a lot less. But if they lower the price to 50 cents, we're going to demand a lot more. An example of demand would be, I'm willing to sell several A's in economics. How much would you pay? And if we were doing this in class, you would see that a lot of people would be willing to pay a little bit, and some people will be willing to pay a lot. We could use that information and create a demand schedule. So, for example, maybe I had somebody who's willing to pay me $25. Another person's willing to pay me $50 and $100 and $150 and $200. And we would put those prices on there, and we would see how many we demanded at those prices. Again, that's called a demand schedule. This is just kind of a funny graphic showing I have a nice desktop set for sale. It's about 12 years old. Everything on it's outdated. I'm trying to get $900 for it. Message me if interested. And obviously for something like this, there's not going to be a whole lot of demand because the price is too high. But maybe if they sold it for $10, $15, maybe somebody would buy it. Why does the law of demand occur? The law of demand is a result of three separate behavior patterns that overlap. First one is the substitution effect. Second one is the income effect. And the last one is the law of diminishing marginal utility. And remember, we talked about diminishing marginal utility in our first unit. We said that the more we have of something, the less satisfaction we get from it. So why does the law of demand occur? We start off with the substitution effect. If we think about Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, let's say, if the price goes up for a product, consumers buy less of that product and more of another substitute product and vice versa. So if Coke and Pepsi are both $1 a can, Coke goes up to $2, but Pepsi stays at $1, chances are people are going to buy more Pepsi and vice versa. Number two, the income effect. If the price goes down for a product, the purchasing power increases for consumers, allowing them to purchase more. And if the price goes up for a product, the purchasing power decreases for consumers, allowing them to purchase less. And then the law of diminishing marginal utility. Utility, of course, meaning satisfaction. We buy goods because we get utility from them, or we get satisfaction from them. The law of diminishing marginal utility states that as you consume anything, the additional satisfaction that you will receive will eventually start to decrease. In other words, the more you buy of any good, the less satisfaction you get from each new unit consumed. So what does this have to do with the law of demand? And how does this affect the pricing of business? So if you think about that, the substitution effect, the income effect, and the law of diminishing marginal utility, how do those affect the law of demand? Well, we already know that if people have more money, then chances are we're going to produce more, and people are going to buy more. And if people have, if the price of one product goes up, then we're going to buy more of the other one. Those are kind of obvious. But the third one is really the one to think about. How does this affect the law, how does it affect the pricing of business? Well, let's take a look at this. This is a sample from Disneyland resorts and their prices per day for tickets. Well, we can see here of a one-day ticket is $96 a day. But what do we notice about a two-day ticket? Well, if you're willing to go for 2 days, you're going to get you're getting $7 off per day. If you're willing to go for 3 days, you're going to get a little over $20 off, or almost $20 off per day, and so on and so forth. So the reality is that they keep dropping their price. And a 5-day ticket, it comes out to be $53 a day. But what do we notice about here? You spent $266 a ticket instead of $96 for a one-day ticket. So they price this accordingly. They know that after the first day, your level of satisfaction is going to go down. So as a result, the price goes down. But they want you to spend more money. So they create this pricing structure, which they hope will cause you to buy a 5-day ticket, or maybe a 3 or 4 or 5-day ticket, and where they really start making some money. And they basically, at a 5-day ticket, they have almost tripled what you were going to spend if you just went for one day. So this is how businesses attack that, and they combat the law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, so graphing demand. Now we get into the demand curve. A demand curve is a graphical representation of a demand schedule. The curve is downward sloping, showing the inverse relationship between the price on the y-axis and the quantity demanded on the x-axis. Let's draw a new demand curve for milk. So you want to draw this in your notes in your BOK right now. But let's look at here. Look at this. On the left-hand side, we have a demand schedule. Remember, I talked earlier about how much people would pay for grades. And in this case, we're using the price of milk and the quantity demanded. At $1, we would demand 80 units of milk. At $2.50, $3.30, $4.20, $5.10. And we can see that inverse relationship right there. The more expensive it gets, the quantity demanded drops significantly. We can see too here that our price on our y-axis and then our quantity on our x-axis is representative of the demand schedule. Here's what the curve would look like if we plotted out the points. We plot out a point at 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then we have quantity 10, 20, 30, 50, and 80. So if I was to ask you to draw a demand curve for hamburgers, it would look something like this. You would always have it working from the top left to the bottom right. It's downward sloping. And again, it has an inverse relationship. Now, occasionally, something happens where we have a shift in demand. All other things held constant, meaning everything else is equal. The assumption is dropped. Movement no longer occurs along the demand curve. Rather, the entire demand curve shifts. So a shift means that at the same prices, more people are willing and able to purchase that good. This is a change in demand, not a change in quantity demanded. So let me back up here real quick just to clarify. So here we're talking about price changes. So as we can see, from $1 to $2 to $3 to $4 to $5 and vice versa, it's all movement up and down that curve, right? So if I said, hey, if we were at $1, what's our quantity? You would say 80. I said, if we moved to $3, what's our quantity? And you would say 30. So our quantity has changed by 50 units. Okay, so anytime we're talking about a price change, it's movement along the curve. Now, let's go back to the shifts in demand. When there is something other than price change, that is called a change in demand. So price change has to do with quantity demand. Shifts that are related to something other than price is change in demand. Price never, ever shifts the curve. Okay, so let's take a deep breath here as we move into the shifters here. So what if milk makes you smarter? So again, we start off with the exact same chart. Demand schedule on the left, which is representative of what you just drew. And we have our demand curve. And again, if it had to do with price, it would be movement up and down that curve. But what if milk makes you smarter? Chances are we're going to drink more of it. We're going to want more milk. So we're going to demand more milk at these prices. So instead of 80 at $1, now we want 100. And instead of 50 at $2, we want 70. Instead of 30 at $3, we want 50, and so on. This is going to shift our curve to the right. And this is now representative. These new points now represent our new quantities. So before, we demanded 10 at $5. Now with our new curve, you can see that we're demanding 30 at $5, and so on. So again, if it's a price change, it's movement up and down the curve. But if it's something other than price, and in this case, it was milk makes you smarter, so we're going to prefer to drink milk over other beverages, it shifts the curve to the right. That is an increase in demand. Prices didn't change, but people want more milk. So what if milk makes, well, I should say, what if milk causes baldness? So what if milk causes baldness? Are we going to want more milk? Probably not. So we look over here at demand schedule, we can see instead we wanted 80 for $1. Instead, now we want 60 at $1, and 30 at 2, and 20 at 3, and so on and so forth. So which way do you think this curve is going to shift? Yep, it's going to shift to the left. And now we can see when we plot out those new points, at $1, we're at 60. At $2, we're at 30. At $3, we're at 20, and so on and so forth. And again, that wasn't a price change, right? It just had to do with causing baldness, so we shifted the curve. We have a decrease in demand. Prices didn't change, but people want less milk because they don't want to be bald. What happens to the demand for milk if the price of milk goes up? So this one's kind of a trick, right? Because you think, well, we were just shifting, so it's going to go to the left or right. No, nothing. Demand stays the same, right? It's just at the higher price, we're going to demand less. Okay, let's look at change in quantity demand versus change in demand. This is basically there are two ways to increase quantity from 10 to 20. One, A to B is a change in quantity demand due to a change in price. And two, A to C is a change in demand. It's a shift in the curve. So both are ways to increase quantity from 10 to 20, but one had to do with the price change, the other one had to do with the shift of the curve. So what causes a shift in demand? We have 5 shifters, or sometimes we call them determinants, so you could see that word. 1, preferences and tastes. 2, income. 3, number of consumers. 4, expectations, future expectations. And 5, related goods. So what does this mean? Preferences and tastes. So do we prefer eating McDonald's instead of Burger King? Or for whatever reason, people woke up one day and they preferred Cane's over Chick-fil-A or things like that. So our preferences and tastes have changed. Income. Are we making more money or are we making less money? How about number of consumers? Do we have a lot more people living in Frisco? What has that done to the demand for products at Stonebriar Mall? What about expectations? What if we heard that maybe war was going to start in the Middle East next week? We might all go fill up our gas tanks because we're going to expect gas to become more expensive. And then related goods. If the price of syrup goes up, do we buy more or less pancakes? We buy less because the syrup's more expensive. We're not going to buy any more pancakes now. But what about if the price of ketchup goes down? What does that do to the demand for hot dogs? The demand for hot dogs goes up. So that's related good. Changes in price don't shift the curve. It only causes movement along the curve. You will hear that 1,000 times from me and Miss Rosenfeld. Preferences, again, do you want to fly American or Delta? Related goods. This is going over what I just said. Substitutes are used in place of one another. If the price of Pepsi falls, demand for Coke will increase. Will decrease. Complements are two goods that are bought and used together. So again, we talked about hot dogs and ketchup. This is hot dogs and buns. Complements, milk and cereal. Substitutes. That's always a good one. They look pretty similar. And complements, chainsaws, and Halloween costume. Okay, let's hit quick practice questions. Which of the following will cause a demand for milk to decrease? A decrease in income, right? So if we make less money, we're going to demand less milk. Which of the following will cause the quantity demanded of milk to decrease? Well, we know if it's quantity demanded, it's going to have to do with price. So an increase in the price of milk means we're going to demand, our quantity demanded of milk is going to go down. This is something we've done in class. You can get this from Miss Rosenfeld or me. That's for our practice problems. We'll print it out for you. And that's it. So if you have any questions, be sure to ask us. We will be moving on to supply in the next video. And we will see you in class.